Hello, my name is Mr. Curtis, and this is Bruce. Uh, no, not the head on the stick, the little paintbrush character down here. That's Bruce. Yeah, Bruce is very excited because today is Puppets Part 2. Thank you, Bruce. That's right. So a couple of weeks ago, we started making puppets. We made some heads on a stick, and we made some hands using some homemade clay like this little head Bruce has, and we also used some masking tape. So today we're going to be finishing those off, and we're going to be painting them so that we can move on to step 3, which will be the last step, and we'll finish off these puppets. So Bruce, head on over to your puppet making station and let's get started on finishing off these puppets. Yes. Okay, I know. You love your puppet. Yeah, great. Okay. Okay, head off. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, head off. All right. Off you go. Off you go. Okay, there you go. Down you go. All right. Let's get started. Okay, so puppets part 2. Here we are. Now, as you might remember before, I made this sort of lizardy type face here. This character with the lizard kind of turtle face. So I'm going to be painting it today, but there's a few other things I want to do to it before I'm ready to paint. Also, I had a choice of either the masking tape hands, or I also, if you remember, I made some hands out of the homemade clay, but I think I like these hands better. So I'm going to use these hands and paint them up and get them ready. They're mainly ready to go, I think, before. I don't think there's anything else I have to do to them before I paint, but with this face, I do have to do something. Now, the mouth is wide open here, and I think I want to keep the mouth closed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of hot glue. Now, if you don't have hot glue, there may be other ways of doing this. You could use tape. You could tape over that if I wanted to. It's a pretty specific problem. That's specific to my puppet, so you might not have this problem. But there is something I'm going to do with the hot glue that you might want to do as well, and that has to do with the eyes. So you'll remember last time I made these eyes out of the homemade clay, and I'm going to glue those eyes into my eye sockets, and I have to prepare those eye sockets yet. So I'm going to just take a little bit of this glue off of there so that it's not building up too much, and I'm going to have to hold it until it's totally dry. The next thing I'm going to do so that the eyes can fit, because what will happen if I just glue the eyes in like that, they're really going to bulge out quite a lot, and I don't think I want such bulgy eyes. I want them to go in to the head a little bit. So after this glue dries here, I'm going to go in with my knife. I'm going to cut that open, and I'm going to try to push the eyes in there a little bit. So once again, I'm using my X-Acto knife to do this. So if you have a problem like this, if you want your eyes to be in, you want to make a space for your eyes into the skull of your puppet like I'm doing, then make sure you get an adult to help you with this part. See if they have a sharp knife. You don't have to use an X-Acto knife, but a sharp knife will work. And even if you don't have a sharp knife, you might even be able to just use a skewer and poke that in and try to open it up a little bit so you can get your eye in there. There's lots of different ways of getting the job done. Okay, I think that mouth is closed now. I think I like that. Hopefully it doesn't open up as I'm working away here. Go. Now still very bulgy. these eyes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some eyelids. Okay, so there we have it. I've glued in the eyes. I wanted to give him some nostrils, but didn't like my first attempt. It kind of looked a little too skeletal-like. So then I added the nostrils on the side, just little holes, and then closed up the mouth. So now I'm ready to give him a coat of paint. Okay, we're all set up to do some painting. So I've got my water here, container of water to rinse your brush. I've got my head and hands ready to paint. I've also got my paints here. I'm just using these very inexpensive acrylic paints. These are ones that you can buy at any dollar store, you'll find them. But if you don't have these, but you still have watercolor paint from when we did our watercolor lesson, watercolor paints can work as well. But I would just suggest mixing them quite thickly. Don't add a lot of water to your mixture. And you probably will have to do layers. So when you spread on that paint, let it dry and then do another layer over top. So layers is the theme. So with acrylic paint as well. Acrylic paint, this paint dries very quickly, but you want to make sure that you're doing layers and you're not blobbing it on. So there is a bit of technique to this. I'm just using a very inexpensive brush too. This is a brush. It may have even come from the dollar store as well. So just a simple brush will work. So we're going to start with the hands first. I'm going to, because I want this character to be kind of lizardy, I'm going to start with a turquoise blue, because I think that might be kind of interesting for my lizardy character. And I would go green, but I don't have very much green here. I just have a little bit. So I'm going to start with blue, let that dry, and then do just a slight dusting of the green over top and see what that does for me. I also have orange here because I thought maybe orange would work, and black just for mixing. But you use the colors that you're going to need for your character. I don't know what your character is, so your character is going to have different needs as far as colors go. So I'm going to start with my blue. I've got a little yogurt lid here that I'm going to use just to put as a palette where I'll put my paint. Makes it a little bit easier to pick up the paint. And I'm just going to brush that on. And I'm not using any water to water down the paint at all. I'm just brushing it right on. So the main thing here is when you are spreading the paint, if you're using acrylic paint or if you're using the watercolor, make sure that you're just really spreading it out as far as it will go before you get some more paint. See, look at that, I hardly took any, and it's actually covering the whole hand here. And you can see a little bit of that color of the masking tape shining through here a bit, but I don't mind that actually so much. And if you do not like that and you want your color to be a little more solid, then just give it some time, let it dry. It'll dry within minutes, and then you can go over and do another layer. So I'm not going to set this down here because that will stick. So what's best to do is I'm going to get a jar or something. I'm going to put it into a jar, and that will allow it to dry much faster. Yeah, so for now I'm going to just put it out of the way, in a place where it can dry. And I'm going to do my next hand. It is important to paint your hands and your head of your puppet, because not only does it make it a little more interesting because you're adding color to it, but with the masking tape over time, that stickiness of the masking tape will start to not be so sticky, and it's likely that your puppet will start to fall apart. So painting it, especially with acrylic paint, will actually help to seal it and will allow it to last longer too. Now I'm going to do the head. So this one's a little tricky because I have to get around the eyes. So I'm going to do everything but the eyes first, and then I'm going to do around the eyes very carefully. So, one thing that I can do, acrylic paint I don't think is going to stick very well to the homemade clay. So if I do get a little bit of paint on the clay, I can wipe it off now while it's wet, or I can wait until it dries, and I think I might be able to pick it off. Okay, doesn't look like much yet. Looks a little bit ghoulish, but gotta let that dry now. I'm gonna clean up the eyes, and we're gonna do the next stage. Okay, I'm back, and everything's dry, so I'm gonna go in with my green and see how that looks. I'm gonna add a little bit of green, and I'm gonna try a bit of a dry brushing technique and just see what that looks like. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure I don't have too much paint on my brush. And I'm going to, even on a piece of paper towel here, just wipe a little bit of it off so that it's kind of a dry brush, but it's still got a little bit of paint on there. And I'm just going to use that and just sort of rub it on, because I still want to see a bit of that blue coming through. And that's going to give it a little bit more of a lizard's kind of scaled, mottled sort of look. That's the idea anyway. Okay, now that's got to go and dry, and do the hands the same way. Boo! Here he is, the finished head of my lizard person. So what I did is I finished the eyes using the blue Sharpie to make the irises, and then I used a black Sharpie to make the little black dot, the pupil in the center. And then I mixed a little bit of black in with my blue paint, and then I painted in the inside of the mouth, and then around the nostrils, and a little bit on the side of the head, just to give it a little bit of definition and the impression of shadow where maybe the ears might be, that kind of thing. So I think it's pretty well done. Things that you can do, every puppet's different. I don't know what your character is going to be like, but you might need some hair, and so you could easily add some hair by gluing on some yarn, or you can use strips of felt even, or something like that. Maybe a hat would be a fun thing to add. So different things like that. And we'll be talking a bit about accessories and things that your puppet can wear or hold a little bit next time. So there he is. There we have it, a painted head on a stick. It's got its eyes finished. It's looking pretty good. It's got some character already, and that's a good sign. I wonder how your puppet's turning out and what it will become once you've got the body and other accessories built. Well, that's going to be for another time in part 3 of puppets. Until then, let's see how Bruce made out with his painting of his puppet head and hands. Let's check it out. Hey Bruce, how's your puppet coming along? Oh, look at that. Wow. Look at this. Bruce is really making this puppet his own. There's something really familiar about this character. Can't quite put my finger on it. Bruce, what did you use for the hair? Oh, look at that. Bruce took one of my old paint brushes, snipped off the bristles, and glued that onto his puppet for the hair. Pretty creative use of old materials, Bruce. So until next time, keep thinking creatively and be kind to yourself. And maybe Bruce, next time ask before you snip off the bristles off of one of my brushes, okay? It's okay, Bruce.